So back here, I've got exhaust to try and get hooked up. All these spots where only little people can reach. I've already got this mount locked in. It's not tight. Everything's kind of loose. It's just sitting there holding it in place so it doesn't move around on me too much. I've got a motor mount back here on the very bottom that has to get done. I got to crawl around in the slop to do that. That's the worst part. I hate crawling underneath here. And then I got this motor mount here, which I can't really see how unlined up it is, but it's got a, I've got to get a bolt through that. And then it's a matter of just putting hoses and just kind of the reverse of how I tore it all apart. So hopefully I don't do any more damage than I've already done. Hopefully it runs for another week or so and then I can scrap it. You know, with this wiring harness, all of these connections and everything, they pretty much fall into line and land right where they used to be. They've got a lot of memory, and GM pretty much made it idiot-proof to where it'll only plug into one connection. It won't plug into something next to it. So it is pretty much idiot-proof, but they've severely underestimated this idiot. Alright, so now that I've got the engine in, it's just a matter of lining up the motor mounts and getting a little bit of this, a little bit of that, let it up, let it down, work my way into getting the bolts in the motor mounts. I've only got 3 of them, and then I've got like looks like an engine dampener kind of thing, just kind of takes up the shock from the engine bouncing around. Anyhow, it's just a matter of getting motor mount bolts in, and then I have to go through and get all the wiring hooked back up, hoses, all that jazz. If anything interesting happens, I'll let you know. But other than that, this is all going to be pretty boring. So I got a motor mount here, and I've got to get a bolt to go through that way, and it's just lining up the hole on there. I've got this guy here that I have to put a plate back on top of this and mount it to that. Back there, there's another motor mount. I've got some exhaust to hook up. It's just 3 bolts, and then I have a ton of wiring and hoses and all that stuff. Alright, so to get this motor mount to line up, I don't know if I get a better picture of it. Let's see. Maybe. I gotta get this hole there. You see that hole there? To line up with this one and get a bolt through it. I got this little hole here, so if I push this back, it doesn't quite do it, but I got this guy that I can get in here. This is hard to do with one hand, I'm telling you. As a matter of fact, I don't think I can do it with one hand, but if I get that in there and pry my hand out of the way. Hold on, I'm sorry. Oh, tragedy. So, I'll try and get this in here and pry it back. It's going. There it is, pretty close. Yeah, we'll call that good. Now I just got to take her up a little bit. I'm going to leave that in there so it doesn't roll back on me again. Take her up a bit and see if I can put that bolt in it. Luckily, I'm in a spot that I can reach the engine's place a little bit. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Come up. Come up a little bit more. Just a fuzz. One more. There we go. And maybe. Now, let's see if I can get that bolt started. I was smart enough to bring the bolt with me. Look at that. Now I just gotta stick that sucker in there and run it in. This is really hard to do with all this stuff in the way. There we go, threads are started. I'm gonna leave everything loose. Get out. I'll leave everything loose until I get them all started, and then I can tighten stuff up. Okay, so now that I got that first motor mount started, we look back here to the back, and you see that one is extremely low, so I might just have to jack up the, hopefully with that first one started in the front, I can just lift the motor up with the cherry picker and get that to line up. And then it's just one more bolt and I'm motor's in. So every serpentine belt I've ever done, all you have to do is put a 3/8 ratchet in the tensioner and turn it, and it loosens up the tensioner, and then you get the belt on, and then the tensioner pushes down on it. Piece of cake. This one, look, I can't, it's up against the frame. I can't figure it out. So you look down in there, here's the tensioner, right there, and there's, look at that. When I had the engine halfway out is when I pulled this belt off. Now I got to figure out a way to get that pulley loose. I got to pull that pulley up somehow. I can't get. It's like they did that on purpose just to make me mad. Stupid little cars. So this is how I ended up doing it. I'm sure it's wrong, but I'm sure it's wrong. I'm like, it is so wrong. Everything I've done on this car is wrong because this car is so stupid. I ended up getting this guy and getting it in here up against, in that pulley, and leveraging it like that. And slowly brought it up and carefully put the belt on. And I didn't cut my fingers off. So dumb. I'm sure there's a right way to do it or a special tool, but I was under the car, inside the car, in the trunk. Nothing seemed to work. There's a little hole here, and it goes in the general area, but it has nothing to do with that. It's like, I'm sure it's just, probably have to have a real thin ratchet to get. Whenever a transmission burns up on you, it throws a bunch of garbage into the cooler, and it's always a good idea to flush it out and get that old stuff out. I'm just air compressor, and then I got a can of this AutoZone, whatever, O'Reilly's Advanced, and pretty simple. Try not to get it on you. And I don't have a fitting to go in there, so I'm just squeezing it to keep the air from getting past it. Once you get most of the air out, then you take this guy, put her under, hold the can straight up and down. I'm getting a little bit of leakage. Work for me. There we go. I can hear it gurgling. It's coming. There it goes. Get that nasty stuff out so it doesn't, flushing it through the transcooler and the lines. That way that stuff doesn't go back into the good transmission and mess it all up, which I'm assuming it's a good transmission. That's the whole reason I'm really not caring too much about how I'm doing this, because I'm not spending money on it anyhow, because I don't know if that transmission's any good or not. This may all be for naught, but at least it gives me something to do and keeps me out of trouble. I loaned the battery out of the Saturn to a guy who let his battery freeze, and I went to help him get it started. So I'm going to cannibalize the battery out of the Camaro. Oh, you poor baby. Sitting out here being disrespected like this. And you know, everything on this Camaro, pretty much, that's all the tools I need. 1/2 inch, 9/16. It's for a good cause, and I promise once the weather gets nice, you get your battery back. Homemade jerky. It's good. The secret to homemade jerky, a little bit of lime juice in your marinade. Let it sit in that marinade for a couple of days anyhow. I went 3 days on this. It's not bad. I went a little too much lime. Don't go too much, but still good. So I just want to say what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling it right now. I'm going to go on record and say, never again am I going to work on one of these little weird ass front wheel drive clown cars. I don't like it. I'm going to work on a, like, this wasn't fun. You know, it's something that I had to do to get it back on the road. We'll see what happens. But it was not fun. The Camaro was fun. A big old truck, that would be fun. If it's a rear-wheel drive car made for a man to work on, that's all right. I like working on it. I'm not a mechanic. I don't claim to be one. I would be slightly offended if a guy who's a mechanic helped his uncle pour a patio one day and used 10 bags of Saccharine to do it and claimed himself to be a concrete finisher. So to offend those guys, no, I'm not offending any actual mechanics, because this is tough. And a true mechanic would have done this way different than I did, but he also would have had the tools. You know, just like even these little hose clamps. You squeeze them with some channel locks. I know there's an actual tool to do it, and it works really well, and then it, you know, they lock and then they come loose and everything's good. I prefer the old school slot head screw hose clamp. These things, you know, when you're doing it without the right tools and you grab it with some channel locks and the thing shoots out and hits you off the forehead and then bounces across the room and you got to spend an hour and a half looking for it. That's no fun. Once I'm done with the Monte Carlo, I don't think I'm going to mess with, not in a big way anyhow like this project was. I'm not going to mess with these little weird front wheel drive, side motor, sideways sitting motor, front wheel drive, stupid little cars. I mean, I don't think I'll ever buy another one either. I think from here on out, it's going to be a straight up pickup truck. Whatever it's going to be at least rear wheel drive. I can handle 4-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, but you know, the Durango's tough to work on because it's got that 5.7 Hemi and it's in a pretty tight spot, but I'll mess with that thing all day long before I play with this. These things weren't made for someone with big meat mitts to get in there, you know? Okay. Wheels are back on the ground. That will make it so much easier to haul to the scrapyard. This was probably the most difficult part. Yeah. There's a couple airbag sensors like here and over here. So I've never messed with those. I hope I don't get punched in the face or on the side of the head when I try and start it. I had to steal the battery out of the Camaro. It broke both our hearts because someone let their battery freeze and needed help getting his car started. So I let him use the battery out of the Saturn because I didn't think that it was going to be done this quick. But here we go. It's going to be our first shot. I have lights. For some reason it thinks that the back hatch is open and it's not. That's weird. I got the keys and we're gonna get in here. And here we go. Let's fire this thing up. Well, bring the thunder. Other than all the lights on the dashboard being lit up, I don't. Well, wow. Listen to that little guy purr. Nothing's really making any noise. The lights are working. I don't know how much fluid's in that transmission, and I never will know because they're so smart that they took the dipsticks out and never put them back, and there's no dipstick to seal transmission. And that thing sounds good. Just for giggles, I'm going to put it in gear just to see what it does. And it's actually trying to go. All right. That is a beautiful thing. Yep, I can go forward. I can go backwards. She's a little bit low on fluid. Has to be because I cleaned out that. Well, ooh, it sneezed. That's all right. Well, now I can drive it to the scrapyard. Why does it think that the back hatch is open and that light's staying lit? What is going on here? Oh yeah, and I need to put the hood back on. But this was the trickiest part. I had to fabricate some stuff, you know, and it worked. I got some of this stuff from Tractor Supply. Got a bag of bolts and nuts and washers and lock washers, and yeah, you don't want to know what it looks like underneath there, so that I could get my arm down in there and hang onto a bolt. But at least this way now, it's going to be so much easier to pull this out and put it back again when the next thing goes wrong. Quite honestly, though, it is actually real convenient to do this and just pull this whole radiator and everything out, and you get right into the starter, alternator, AC compressor. I'm still dumbfounded by that belt. I don't get how that's supposed to be done. I'd like to learn. But there we go. The Saturn is back to life. All the ridiculous things that could have gone wrong. The hood won't close. Well, she's running. I fired up the Monte Carlo Intimidator. Moved it out of the way so I can get this guy out. Now we'll just go see what she's all about. Maybe walking home. But that's all right. I've walked before. Reverse seems good. I know it needs a little bit of fluid in it since I cleaned that cooler. So I'm going to run down and get some fluid from autos out. We got third gear. That's better than the last one, so I've already made an improvement.